This episode is brought to you by Mortgage Workflow Partners and the Mastering Encompass series, both for users as well as administrators. You can find out all the information about it over at masterengencompass.com. Also, if you'd like to check out what we're doing on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to the channel using the @MasteringEncompass handle. And make sure you stay up to date on all the information, not just with podcasts, but also video content that we bring to you as often as possible. Now let's get on to the episode.
And here we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Thursday's edition. Mastering Encompass. This is June 29th. It's 4th of July weekend. Everybody's pretty much on vacation, I guess, except myself and Luba and Amy, who came today. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
We are your biggest fan club right here.
Oh, my God. You guys are awesome. We have to come up with some kind of plushie or something for Mastering Encompass.
We want t-shirts.
T-shirts? Yeah,
with your face on the front, Mastering Encompass on the back.
You want to hear something?
And a crown.
And a crown? Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
A tiara crown.
I like it. I like it. So I was in a kickoff yesterday. It wasn't really a kickoff. I was in a meeting yesterday with client, and they're implementing lender toolkits. What do you call it? Lender toolkits. Automated underwriting, I'm sorry, I totally screwed that up. Lender toolkits, automated disclosures. Sorry, automated underwriting is the other thing that they are very proud of. Anyway, my point is they in the meeting, I got called out like, oh, the client's gonna be like, oh, you're gonna be fine. You're with Larry. I'm like, dude, that's like no pressure. Like, it's just the guy. I'm just a guy. So
Larry, we love you.
Oh, thank you, Beth. I love you too. And I can only say that because my wife's not around to hear me. Totally fine. Hey, so as we're going into the 4th, and we're in the last Zoom meeting for these, as a reminder for anybody here today or wants to come to these in the future, please get over into masterengencompass.com or mortgage.community. It's the same domain. Basically getting to the Mastering Encompass community, get to the events and replays, and that's where you'll see, you can add them to your calendar. We're also going to be doing some late night events. I know that this time of day, although convenient for work, for those that can do it, it's not always convenient to make it. And so I want to try and get more people showing up. We're also helping loan officers and processors, underwriters, some post-closers, some secondary folks also with what they're doing and some questions they have. And that's not really practical for them to ask those questions during work hours kind of a thing. So we're going to be doing more after hours, like, 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night Eastern, and see how that works out. I'll be out in, Workflow Partners After Dark, Brian. I like it. That's a t-shirt. Now that's a t-shirt right there. I'm going to be doing in a couple of weeks. I'm flying out to go visit one of my daughters who lives in Oahu, and so it's very easy for me to work late East Coast hours out there because I'm 6 hours behind. In any event, again, these events are always about you. So, does anyone have any questions, scenarios, anything you want to work through together as a group on the call today? If you do, go ahead and speak up, put it in chat, whatever. We can do a screen share. The topic I wanted to talk about today was sales and operations tools, because normally in Encompass, we all get sucked into the world of custom input forms or plugins, and we tend to underappreciate or even be unaware of tools that are in Encompass native. And so I always like to exploit as much as I can before I can go on. It does sound like an adult site, Amy. Workflow Partners After Dark. I like where your mind went right away. It's totally clean. It's great. So I want to go through those tools here and talk about the things that I find helpful for sales and operations team, and also get your feedback too. Again, for those that are here or those that are watching. Marissa, if you don't have a commercial Zoom account, just sign up for Zoom with a free account. But honestly, just get over to masterengencompass.com and that's where they will be after today, June 29th, where you can see the replays or catch the live events. But today, if you're trying to get into this now, just go create like a Gmail account, your personal email with Zoom, and it will work. I've been asked about this before, and it will work. But you do have to have a Zoom account to log in to the meeting live. Okay, should I let Katie in, Amy? I guess I should, right? Okay. So we'll let Katie in. So
Yes, please.
yeah, okay. So when I go through the tools, the part that really interests me the most that we typically work with, the first one is, and I'm going to do this in alphabetical order because it's easy and it's the same in everybody's Encompass. But the audit trail I like to talk about because I find that this gets misunderstood, especially if you're implementing Encompass new. The idea of an audit trail from another LOS platform, you might get this idea like, I want everything audited all the time. And so I do like to just share the common knowledge. If you go in these circles, audit trail is from the reporting database. So in order for a field to be in the audit trail, it needs to be in the reporting database first. It needs to be marked as auditable. Be wary of this, gang. If you know, the rule of thumb that I've always had success with is if you have more than 250 fields in the audit trail, you're going to start to probably see some degradation in terms of your performance. There are plugins out there that you can do audit trail where you can actually pull the entire file's audit trail as a consolidated search instead of clicking on your field and then hitting show and only to discover that field 2 is not in the audit trail. You also cannot pull in multiple fields. So having said that, there are a lot of folks who don't rely on the audit trail. What I would rather see you do, again, this is Encompass customization, but it did come up in the community recently. If you go into loan custom fields, you can create any custom field as an audit. And I don't know, for those that are admins here on the call, I don't know how many of you create these audit fields, but I do this quite often when it comes to check boxes on custom input forms. Anybody else do that besides me? So unless you get a tool, it does not require that. I'm not sure what that was for, Lugal. Oh, you mean to add it to the audit trail. So yeah. You can get a plugin, right? You can write a plugin that listens for webhooks through the Encompass API and grab all the changes as they're happening into a loan file to avoid an audit trail kind of a thing. But that's the audit trail tool. Not everybody has plugins. Not everybody has third-party tech, but that's the way that works. Yeah, and it's good. It's good. I like having audits, fields in the audit trail. It's important. I just went through this exercise with a client. If you don't have, there's an input form that's floating out in the public domain where you can export all of your fields, and you can from your reporting database into an Excel sheet. And in that report is a list of what fields are in the audit trail. If you don't have that, I'll drop it in the community with this replay. It's a simple button click on a simple input form, but make sure you take advantage of that because you want to make sure that you understand how many fields are in your audit trail, especially if you're not sure if you're getting the best performance out of your Encompass. It's one of those things to keep track of. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and admit Amanda. AOS tracking tool. I bring this up, even though, again, most companies use this, but if you're using DO, you're not going to find use for this. So if you're a DO shop, you kind of lose this history. Again, you can get a third-party plugin, lots of third-party plugins, but you can get a third-party plugin that actually will track the DO history versus just the DU. This is good. These fields are usable in business rules, so that's a good place. As a loan officer or salesperson, etc. Also, it's healthy to use AUS recommendation up here, whether you're using LPA or DU. where you can put that somewhere, you can easily see that status. So that's a good one to focus on. Cash to close. It's like, oh, well, this is the 1003 or the URLA lender now. You'll see this little input form in a lot of different places. The field, it's important to know that in a lot of these tools, most of these tools, these field IDs are the same as the Encompass field ID. So if you're in a situation where these fields are not, oh, we're not sharing anymore. Oh my gosh, you guys gotta yell at me. Thank you, Luba. So, so we were talking about the audit trail. You're seeing the screen okay now, right, Luba?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry about that. Thank you very much for keeping me honest here. So in the AUS tracking, what I was trying to show here was the AUS recommendation field. So this AUS F.X3. Use this if you're not seeing this anywhere else other than the AUS tracking tool. Some companies will use this on a summary screen or their pipeline view, which gets back to the reporting database. Cash to close, what I was showing on this was the purchase price, and all of these fields are the standard Encompass fields. And part of the challenge that you run into in the native tools is sometimes salesperson can't modify these fields for scenarios. And I'm going to talk about scenarios in a minute, but I do recognize that sometimes this tool is limiting because it is, you know, you can do this on the 1003, you can do this on the URLA lender, that kind of a thing. From a, I'm in a test environment, of course, that's not enabled, but from a lot of places, the compliance review in sales and operations, again, is either not used or improperly leveraged. Make sure that you're working with your team to properly leverage the compliance review for your previews versus your reviews. I say this specifically in the sales side because if you're working in an Encompass where you're not leveraging the preview and you have lower loan amounts and your fees aren't necessarily changing as your loan amounts decrease, you want to watch to make sure you're not going to end up having any issues when that file goes for disclosures. So you might have the benefit of an administrator who kind of gives you those looks. You might understand the A2RQM points and fees test input form if you're that deep into operations as a salesperson. But if nothing else on the sales side, if you're not leveraging the compliance review tool to double check how the file looks before it goes into disclosures, it's certainly something to explore. If you are getting feedback that there's problems with your loans before they go to disclosures. So I do talk about that compliance review. In ops, my feedback for this is make sure that you're using it for preview before any disclosure event, and then in the appropriate spot for review, make sure that you're checking it. My best practices are before the file goes for initial underwrite, before that file goes in for final underwrite. Obviously, again, anytime we have LE or CD going out, we're doing the preview. But then also I have my closers doing a final check on the review to make sure the file's good before they start working on it. And then they do a preview before they send their closing package out. Really important to understand why these two kinds of runs exist and to leverage them properly. If you're not running previews, definitely let's talk more because that's an important part. Any questions so far? I want to take a breath. I don't see anything coming through on the chat besides me forgetting to share screen. So thank you very much for that, Lula. In terms of the next big tool that comes up is debt consolidation. I don't know very many sales folks that actually use this. You're typically floating in the VOL. And what this little tool does on the sales side is you can kind of play around with these fields. As a reminder, all these tools are native, so you can't customize anything. But what you can do is leverage what's here. Yeah, it's older. Yeah, it looks like it's, it's maybe not the best use case for what you're trying to do. But you do have things up in here that tie over to the itemization. If you want to change the margin, if you're dealing with a HELOC or an ARM. or your loan type or your occupancy or position. And then if you want to pay stuff up, it'll change your cash down here. So it's a quick way for you to figure out your LTVs and your CLTVs. And you can obviously update your interest rate here. What you're not seeing, of course, is your full your full PITI. So if you haven't been using this to play around, it's an option. Something else that comes up is you're like, but Larry, I've got more than this many liabilities. And that's what this VOL pop out's for. So you can kind of come in. So again, so you don't have to leave the confines of this input form to mark off what you want to exclude, and then close that. I always say, re-click it to recalculate to catch up with what you're doing. So that one's pretty cool. That again, I find a lot of folks don't use on the sales side for debt consolidation. Disclosure tracking tool. This is like its own little piece. Why you would use this in sales is probably zero, unless you're going back because you're trying to close a loan quickly and you want to find out something about how quickly you can close this loan. So if you're not familiar with the disclosure tracking tool, just a quick primer. Everything that is marked as tracked in the disclosure history of the administrative settings is going to be listed down here. So sometimes companies track like appraisals being sent. Sometimes they're just the LEs or the CDs or the TILs or the GFEs. Some companies do files without LEs, CDs, or anything like that, and they have other disclosures that they're tracking. Maybe you're tracking like the important terms being sent. Anyway, my point is that anything that you're looking to have tracked down here is here. The earliest closing date is a calculated field from Encompass. It's normally trustable. There are times where you want to double check, specifically when you have multiple 1003 sets. So ICE is, Ellie made prior to ICE, but ICE has worked diligently to make sure that's reliable. And I have not found a case where it is technically wrong on its own. I did find a case last week with a client leveraging the Blend platform the Simple Nexus platform, the Simple Nexus platform, where a non-occupying co-borrower did not electronically sign the CD. They didn't even log in to see it. And the CD, this is GFE file, but the CD tracking showed it had been received. And even when you opened up the disclosure event, it plainly showed the non-occupying co-borrower did not electronically view the CD. And they actually closed the file early. Now, the business made a decision that they were fine because it was a purchase, and they had an opinion as far as does the non-occupying spouse or non-borrowing spouse need to acknowledge the CD to do earliest close date. That's a whole different thing. So time zone, is that new? Oh, over here, that is newer, Luba. Yeah, disclosure tracking time zone is newer. I don't know when that was released, but it's not always been there. And Chris, only if you mail it. So for a third-party platform to come in and say that the borrower received it the same day the first borrower electronically signed, that's my problem on here. So it's only electronic if you can only use the mailbox rule for the electronic if the recipient e-consented before you sent the disclosure. In this case, they didn't. So feel free to, we can talk more about it after the meeting in the community if you want, but it's definitely a problem. And this is where you want to come if you're in sales or operations to really figure out your earliest closing date, but pay attention to all of your disclosure events, please. Some of the other things that are happening down here, here's that, loan comparison tool. So this goes back to that scenario, the cash to close tool. What's nice about this, and I wish there was like one more, but what's nice about this is these are the Encompass fields. So when it comes to sales folks that lose the access to edit these fields because the rate is locked or whatever, milestones finished or something. You can copy this into scenario 2 or 3. And so, you know, when you do that, you have the ability to look at these fields. Now, I will tell you that if you look at some of these fields in here, and I'm using the control button on my keyboard and left mouse click, these are individual fields. Now, earlier I said, you know, you've got tools that are native, and so you can't modify them. But in some cases, you have the ability to find these tools on the input form, whether they're in the local cache or they're in the input form builder. And sorry, guys that are waiting on the outside. These are fields that exist. And if your team loses the ability to edit these fields, you can't edit them over here either, unless you take this comparison form and move it into a custom input form. I'm showing you this because if you do have the ability to edit these fields, you can reset and you can copy them and do a side-by-side comparison. And it, again, is it, you know, down here, these pre-qualification results, I don't ever leverage them because I don't really know what red, yellow, green means in the context of current guidelines. But what I can tell you is that each of these columns contains unique fields that turns into a print form. So if we come over here and we print this out, this loan comparison, again, not the prettiest or sexiest, but it can get the job done if you're trying to generate something for somebody to read in a side-by-side comparison. So one of those things, again, where doesn't necessarily mean it's perfect, but it's an opportunity for you to look at something side by side, whether it's internal or external, for you to be able to tell, you know, what's an option, you know, for the borrower to choose, option A or option B. Another tool that comes up is net tangible benefit. So sometimes you're dealing with loans that where you need to document the NTB. That's where you would do it in there. That's one of those tools. I've seen a lot of people turn this into an input form, but this is the actual tool that exists and turns into a print form if you have to manage that. Another tool that, again, comes up for sales a lot is the pre-qualification. Kind of goes along with the some of the other tools that we've talked about, but this is a single way to come up with a pre-qual scenario. If you're using LO Connect or Encompass on the web, when it comes to the opportunities that are in there, this is kind of where you can establish what's allowable to have a pre-qual printed or sent to the borrower. So this is, again, a way to stay off the 1003, stay off of any custom input form, but in sales, be able to offer, and again, even like an LOA situation or a processor situation where you're trying to figure out something very quick, you can come to this pre-qualification tool, pardon me, and you can go through these sections to update your file for what's available. So I like, again, in sales, these are one of the things that I can quickly get on the phone with a borrower or a potential borrower and work through some opportunities in one space without having to jump around for basic data input, regardless of the 1003. Rent versus own. This is an old one. Again, I don't know who's actually seen this or used this recently, but the idea is, what's it going to look like for you if you rent versus own? And of course, you're always gaming this to try to make it so that they own, right? You always want your clients to buy, but truthfully, sometimes it's a little bit more complicated than that, especially if they're in a high tax area or their MI shoots up because of credit score or something like that. So you want to make sure that, you know, if you wanted to find something in Encompass that's rent versus own right now for purchase transactions, is pretty helpful. As far as printing, there is a rent versus own print form, in case you never knew that. And you can come in, and again, I want to temper you. This is not something I would ever give to a borrower, but it's an interesting way to present it. just always remind your clients, your borrowers, and your team members, you are not a tax preparer. You're not a financial advisor. You're simply a mortgage loan originator if you're licensed, and you're offering options for them. And these are some tools that can help them with that. Another tool that is not, I can't offer that. Another tool that comes up sometimes if you're leveraging it and you're using Consumer Connect is a status online. So it's a little bit outside the confines of necessarily a normal tool, but it's a communications vehicle. It's a way to communicate to borrowers, to bring them back into your Consumer Connect experience so that they can understand what's happening. So that's a good way to leverage something inside of Encompass native to keep borrowers updated with quick little messages that bring them back into the Consumer Connect conversation without having to send an email, without having to potentially violate NPI or PII. You just send them a quick note and it brings them right back into Consumer Connect to read the full message about what you want them to know. So that's a tool that's available. And rounding out here at the bottom, verification, documentation tracking. Again, this is one of those things where if you've never seen this or didn't even know you had this, be aware. So there's all kinds of like order outs tracking and docs tracking in Encompass. What this is talking about is the VOE or the VOI or the VOA. So if you're ordering any type of automated verifications, this is where you can kind of see it. It's akin to the TQL services tool, which I totally skipped over. So again, the TQL services tool, TQL total quality loan, it's been out forever. Again, some companies use it, some don't. What's not in the TQL are the verifications. What you do find helpful in TQL tool is, Liv, I'll answer your question in 1 second. What you will find in here are, if you have fraud being ordered, I love it personally for compliance. So anytime you order a compliance review, preview or review, it'll be noted here. So you can see all of your orders and all of your results in one place. But notice again, the categories are predefined. You can't modify that. Going back to the verifications, Liv, you asked, are all vendors on the verification tracking? My understanding of the way this works, because I've never used it personally, is anytime you order any VOA, VOE, VOI, it should travel here. If it doesn't work for you, I would check with your vendor on what their integration status is, or obviously open up a case with ICE. And the last one is what we're working with clients on right now, which is basically helping either start or fully develop task-based workflows. So what we're looking at here on workflow tasks, which is the last tool in the list, is it's Encompass on the web, but you're allowed to get to the tasks here in the loan file. Not to be confused with the task tool. And I intentionally skipped over that. I guess it was a Freudian slip there. So the native tasks here, which have been around forever, are okay, right? It's a text, it's a checkbox. Did I finish it? Did I not finish it? There's no way to bring up the thing that you want them to look at, whether it's a field or whether it's a document. And that couldn't be farther away from where workflow tasks are. So these little guys are actually in, see if I can get this to expand. I don't have any in there. Great, I didn't create any. So administratively, you got to create a task. And when you create a task, you can certainly do the background. If you're an admin, do the background research on task-based workflows. Again, Mortgage Workflow Partners can help you with this if you're interested but unsure about getting it done. You basically have a frame in here of the task and then the item that it's related to. Now, your functionality is limited in desktop. If you really want to fully take advantage of task-based workflows in Encompass, all it means is just need to get the team to Encompass on the web. And yeah, I think when we get back into July, Luba, I think doing a task-based workflow deep dive and working that, I think, is great. So great suggestion. How to set it up, start small. I usually tell people start with departments that are task focused, whether it's a QC team or an appraisal team or a disclosure team, something where you're thinking checklist or you're thinking dynamic checklist, or you're thinking go to this thing like the appraisal we just received and grab this piece of information that's on the appraisal, Lily approves, and get that into Encompass, because you can put the field here, you can put the document over here, and you can put the task up here. That's kind of the way it looks. That's the way I want you to visualize it looking. So yeah, Lou, I'm all for it. Brian, thanks for coming. I'm all for it for setting up for appraisal desk, going over that use case, or disclosure desk for setup team. Liv, I think those are all practical ideas. So that was my quick run through tools for sales and operations. Hopefully this gave you some knowledge and some insight on what some of the things are. For anyone else, any questions before we break for the day? As a reminder, starting July 6th, the Zoom link is going to be dead. The only way you're going to get to have fun on these meetings is get over to masteringencompass.com, go to the Mastering Encompass collection, and then in the events, you'll see the meeting. You can add it to your calendar, give yourself reminders, and that's where all the replays will be as well. You can find all those replays there now. Looking for the hashtag replay. You got it, Chris. Thanks for the attendance and the information. Everybody else, have a safe 4th of July. Please keep all digits away from fireworks and protect your pets. We've got dogs, and they usually go into a panic. So please protect all your pets and be mindful of your neighbors. Have a wonderful 4th of July. And thanks again for coming, and thanks for being part of the best community ever. Take care.